51-year-old Ishmael Mkonyo watches closely as his son makes final touches to a table at a carpentry workshop in central Kenya. It is a trade that was passed on to him by his late father, and he in return passed it on to his son. He is among the first members of the Shona community from Zimbabwe who arrived in Kenya between the 60s and the 70s.
I came to Kenya in 1977. At the time I was a young boy, about 10 years old. I came with my father, who was a missionary.
Those who know say about 100 missionaries arrived in Kenya from Zimbabwe in 1962 to establish the Gospel of God Church. They settled in Nairobi and the neighboring central parts of Kenya.
When they came here, it was like now an evangelization station whereby they could move to another country and came back.
As both Zimbabwe and Kenya were still under the British colony, the missionaries traveled using British passports. Kenya then gained independence in 1963. The missionaries remained put in the East African nation, but with no documentation.
I grew up here, and I now have 7 children, all born in Kenya. Our biggest problem, however, is documentation. I have, for example, been arrested several times due to lack of any form of identification.
Ishmael, together with at least 4,000 other members of the Shona community, are stateless. They are neither Kenyans nor Zimbabweans.
The link that existed at that time, and at that time, lots of things have changed. The countries have changed, the borders have changed. They cannot claim a nationality to Zimbabwe anymore, and Zimbabwe doesn't consider them as citizens any longer. So they don't belong to any state. They're stateless.
We can't go back home because, as like me, there is nothing I know about Zimbabwe. Since my dad came here and he died and I buried him here, so there is nothing I know about Zimbabwe.
About 4 generations of the community now live in Kenya, but without the right to be citizens, although they speak the local languages and have lived here for decades, learning even the cultures of the local communities. We face a lot of challenges. Police arrest us all the time and demand identity cards. You cannot even afford to buy your freedom. My greatest fear is I watched my father suffer. I'm now suffering. Will I also watch my child suffer due to lack of identification? A few kilometers from here, women are huddled in a small room. It is here that they weave baskets, their only source of revenue. We meet FC Stephen, who came to Kenya in the 60s with her husband. When he passed on, she buried him here in Kiambu County. She has never been back to Zimbabwe, but she has no way of proving that she is Kenyan. As a result of their statelessness, FC and the Shona people cannot enjoy government services that citizens in Kenya enjoy. There is no government-linked service that you can get without an identity card. Take, for example, if you want a mobile money service, the teller will ask you for an ID card. If you do not have it, he will send you away.
ID. As far as now, so many children are at home just because of a birth certificate. Other things is that you cannot even register your phone so that you can communicate with customer or any other to do any other thing.
Because they are stateless, the Shona community are in most cases forced to drop out of formal education. Many of them have taken up informal employment. But even here, they find challenges. They are exploited as they try to sell their wares, and most of the time they are arrested because they lack the proper documents to register their businesses.
So you need to borrow the identity of somebody else. So the daily life is very difficult for a stateless person.
Some of them have opted to marry locals in order to acquire documents. Every Saturday, they meet here at the Gospel of God Church in Nairobi, in some way retracing the steps of their forefathers, a place where they find solace in the Word of God and each other's company, if only for the few hours that they are here. The leaders have had meetings with the government with the facilitation of the United Nations Refugee Agency, UNHCR, seeking a solution to their plight.
We do ask the government to remember us and try to give us these ID cards or to allow us to be Kenyans so that we can have good life here in Kenya.
Until then, the Shona community can only pray that their plight will finally come to an end. Sarah Kimani, SABC News, Kenya.